Okay, in this lab, we're going to take a look at File Transfer Protocol, or FTP, which rides on either port 21 or port 20. And there's different details right here. We have the client-server model, control and data channels, active and passive modes, and then this all goes into details that we probably don't have to focus on, but I just want to give you a broad brush of what FTP was before we proceeded to today's lab or assignment. What is FTP? Have you ever tried to send an email of which the contents are to exceeds the capacity of the ability for that client to be transferred? For example, if you ever tried to send a data update, or maybe a larger manuscript, or maybe a CAD engineering drawing or something like that, and you have to go through tricks like you have to upload it to your Google Drive first, and then you're just sending the link, or you have to go through Bloat Mail, which was an app from the early 2000s that allow you to send larger files. You'd have to do that, but those are all like workarounds, if you will. What would be, a typical way that you could actually create policies around to transfer larger files than is usual, and that was always FTP. Now, there's two flavors of FTP. There's File Transfer Protocol, and then there's TFTP, which is Trivial File Transfer Protocol. The difference is FTP rides on TCP frames or packets, and TFTP, or Trivial File Transfer Protocol, rides on UDP. The difference is, obviously, FTP requires a connection, or it requires the three-way handshake or whatever, or the connection between both the client and the server before the transfer can begin. And with Trivial File Transfer Protocol, it does not require a connection. You can literally wake up, quote unquote, a remote server with the TFTP request and just simply begin transferring the protocol. Now, FTP seems a more commonsensical approach, but that's only if you have the luxury of the server being, on, awake, and available to accept requests. With Trivial File Transfer Protocol, you're going to see things like Cisco iOS operating systems being transferred to a system that may not be able to send out a ping. And what you're doing, you can almost rescue a dead piece of hardware like that. But we're not going to talk about TFTP. We're just talking about File Transfer Protocol. And just to give you an idea, what we have here is we are going to demonstrate the FTP client server model right here. But in this lab, the FTP server and the client are going to be in the same entity. So, for example, let me just grab my let's see. Let me grab the file that I was working on. So in this case, we're having the client be Ubuntu and the server being Kali. So we have C client for Ubuntu, and then server client. So the file that we want to transfer from the Kali server to the Ubuntu client, obviously all the files are located on the server, and then of course both of them are going to be on this very computer I'm actually doing the video on. The bare metal server is just my MacBook Pro. Usually in data centers, your bare metal server is going to be some Dell PC, and the Dell will have an operating system that will basically, the only thing it's going to be doing is presenting the transparent layer, which will facilitate all your I'm going to say, there's a word I'm trying to look for, tenants. So a tenant, if you will, is you have your bare metal server here, and your on the bare metal server, you're going to see this transparent you're going to have this transparent layer, and on the virtualized or transparent layer, you are going to have also an almost unlimited amount of tenants, if you will, and these tenants are those operating systems, those server OSs that will ultimately enable or facilitate everyone being shared on top of that. So on one tenant could be Windows operating system, another tenant could be Linux, Red Hat, and then another tenant could be Ubuntu or something like that. But these are all autonomous systems presenting like Docker images or something. So, anyways, that's what I'm trying to replicate here to the best of my ability. Now, for those of you that may not have a PC or a laptop powerful enough to carry two virtualized servers simultaneously, you can go ahead and just have your Kali virtual server here, and then you can work with your host as the client. Okay, so your host in essence is the bare metal server. I just was able to create two virtualized servers, Ubuntu as the client and Kali as the server. Now, if we go back to here, how FTP works is that we have the client. It connects to the server with port 21, and which there could be some authentication, or there will be some authentication, and it's going to request, like in this case, we're just going to request a simple file, and then we have the data channel. Okay, it responds, and the data channel will actually send out the actual information back and forth, the command information, or the actual my mistake. The command channel is port 21, and the data channel requesting and sending is to port 20. So the client is the entity that is requesting the information, requesting the file, and the server is simply like a web server. It's listening. It doesn't do anything until it's requested to do. So it's listening on these ports 20 and 21, and it actually responds to the commands, and it actually opens the data connection, and it keeps the connection alive. We have active versus passive FTP, in which the active FTP is the client establishes the command channel, server establishes the command channel, and we have passive FTP, client establishes both command and data channels, and the server sends a random port. Okay, and finally, we have something called anonymous FTP, in which it is popular on the World Wide Web because it gives everyone public access without authentication. I've seen a lot of Linux distributions utilize that for the purpose of distribution upgrades and things like that. And what kinds of files can be sent? We have ASCII files such as text files. We have the EBCDIC. That's basically IBM. So mainframe files, right? And then we have bin files or binary files. Those are essentially ELF files or executable files. So those are the different types of things. Now here is the today's lab, and let me be able to scroll. So what we're doing here is installing the VSFTPD package in Kali. So in other words, we're going to create a local FTP user account for lab testing, testing the base connectivity, and then configuring UFW, or the Universal Firewall on Kali, to deny FTP. What are we going to use? The host machine. Now the host machine, as I said, in this context, the host machine I'm using is another virtualized instance with Ubuntu, and the Kali will be the FTP server. So this Ubuntu is the FTP client, Kali is FTP server, but you can just use your own host machine as the client, which is fine because not everyone may have a laptop powerful enough to have two virtual servers on it, which is fine. Now the other thing is some of you are using what is it, VirtualBox. Now the reason why a lot of people love VirtualBox is because it is free, but it's also the easiest to configure. I've run into even myself. I've run into issues with because I have a MacBook. I run virtual VMware Fusion, and then of course on if you have Intel, you can just use virtual You can just use VMware, and just some people think that some people's experiences with VMware and VMware Fusion is like it's sometimes difficult to set up, and then so that's why a lot of people gravitate to VirtualBox. The only issue with VirtualBox is that you cannot run two concurrent instances of VirtualBox, so it's not like you can have two virtual machines talking to each other. The advantage of VMware Fusion and VMware, which are both Broadcom products, is that the good thing is, well, the bad thing is a little bit harder to set up. The good thing is that you can have two instances talking to each other, and in this case, this enables us to do this. I'm going to say model right here, in which you have a client Ubuntu virtual server talking to a server, another virtual server, which is a server. So in one machine, you can have both a client VMware instance and a server VMware instance. So anyways, we have so the bare minimum is your host machine, and then bringing up a Kali Linux VM. Now you can use any Linux that you want. I'm just using Kali as the example right here. And network note, we're not using a router. So in the Packet Tracer Lab, you have, I can assign various network devices, and sometimes it's a little bit more, I'm going to say, robust in terms of the protocols being used, but it's still a simulated environment. So even though this is we're not using a router in this case, because quite frankly, it would be too time consuming to use your Linux, even your virtualized Linux as a router. I'm just saying this is more of a real world situation because we're using real world tools, I guess. So the pre-lab preparation is we have IP. So first you need to record. First you need your own IP address so you can really understand what's going. So you can you're able to select a label, if you will, to actually grab the FTP with. So you need to know the Kali's IP address, and IPA is a good command. I prefer ifconfig. Okay, so if we go back here, sorry, it's just taking a second here. And if we do ifconfig, that to me is gives a lot of information right here. Now we do have IPA, and that gives a certain amount of information, but I have always been a fan of ifconfig. Note in some cases, let me see, on this Ubuntu instance, sometimes you have to do sudo. So for example, on this one right here, ifconfig, well, we didn't have to do that, but you notice that you should have one IP address. Here is 192.168.1.80.182. Here is 192.168.1.214, and you should make sure they have the same broadcast IP address. That way we know they are in the same network. So that's what we want. Okay, and then we want to install the FTP server on Kali. So we have sudo apt update. I actually have a better. There is a better, I guess you could say, command for that. So if I do cd downloads and I do ls update.txt, so I'll do cat update.txt. So actually sudo apt upgrade dash y, and so the double ampersand is just notes that you're going to run these commands concurrent, one after the other. So in other words, contiguously, you're going to run these commands contiguously. So you're going to run sudo apt update dash y. The dash y is there to like basically overwrite and just say yes to all the questions it might ask. And then sudo apt update full upgrade yes, and sudo apt auto remove dash yes. So that allows the Kali to, instead of just saying, hey, can we remove this, it'll just say it'll auto remove. So anyways, that to me is a better example of how you update. And then you can install vsftpd, and then you're also going to install UFW, Universal Firewall, okay, and then the FTPD, that is the FTP service, and then you're going to add FTP user as your user, okay, and then you're going to copy the configuration file to it. You're just going to create. You're going to make sure that you also have a backup. So what this does, it creates another instance of vsftpd.conf, and it appends it with a .back. So you're going to, in essence, you're going to have a backup of your original configuration. Okay, now you're going to go into your vsvtpd conf and make sure that you're going to have these things enabled in it. So if we go to, if we do cat and then etc vsftpd.conf, you are going to see something like this, and you're just going to make sure that it is, everything is supposed to be here that is supposed to be here. Okay, so for example, we have an anonymous enable. It'll say no. Local enable, it'll say yes. Now this, I believe, was commented out, and make sure right enable is configured to yes, but you're not going to have to change any configuration. The most you're going to have to do is just remove this hash mark, because that is what they consider a comment. So you're just going to uncomment the hash, which will basically activate the line. Okay, then you're going to do the following: sudo system control restart vs ftbd, and then you're going to enable it, and then you're going to make sure that the status says, make sure it says it is activated. It says active. And the no pager, just so you know, that enables the, here, let me just give you an example. So if we say sudo system control status vsftbd no pager, if we click on enter, and it just gives you the output, and then it gives you the cursor back. But if you don't do no pager, you'll just have to press a Q for end. That is the difference. So anyways, so you should put the no pager right here, and then we verify the baseline connectivity. So in other words, you're verifying that FTP is working. So from your client, whether it is your host computer, here on, as you can see, all you have to do is look at the color scheme, and I think Ubuntu, at least the Ubuntu GNOME version, is the only one with this purple background. I believe so. But as you can see, we did connect to the 192.168.1.214. That is the FTP, the remote FTP server. By remote, it's kind of strange when people say remote. Generally, they're referring to a service that is outside of a local area network, such as remote file updates, or we can say that even like Gmail is or Dropbox is a remote service, but that's of course using SaaS, software as a service, which by default means it's not in your local area network. But in this case, we're referring to a server that is on our local area network or our LAN, but it is yet outside of our local computer, which is still interesting. And it's showing here that we connected via 220, okay? And it just means that that is the connection, that is the message, or code 220, that, hey, you have connected successfully. And then here, the message 331 is, which is specifying a password, and then login has been successful. Then you can imagine the question mark. The question mark allows us to see the different commands, and then we have, idle, we have less, and ls. So in this case, I wanted to list the current directory, and here, and it gives us a message of the directory listing, and then we issue the command get. Okay, get, and all I want to do is get the company data.txt, which is located in the directory, the FTP directory that I created, and I just added company data. Okay, and here is the messaging right here. First it says no such file or directory, and what I probably didn't type in the path correctly. So then I went back and I just changed directory to var www.html, and then I said I changed directory once again to FTP, and it says directly successfully changed, entering extended passive mode. And then I said get company data.txt, and it said transfer complete. And then I just said quit, and then it says goodbye. And then you might be asking, well, where's the proof that you were able to download it? And let me get to it right now. Let me do clear. And let me just do an ls. First of all, we do present working directory. I'm just in my home directory. If we do ls, we can see company data.txt has been transferred to my home directory. So in this case, we just wanted to verify, of course, that FTP actually worked, and it did work. So in other words, we will move on now to the next part of the lab, which actually creates a firewall rule preventing us from enjoying or accessing the FTP protocol, okay, but yet we'll be able to ping it. So that is kind of like an extended ACL.